Yuka Royer is here in studio. Good to have you with us tonight, Yuka.
Hi, Sharon.
So you're starting off with the long-stalled trade deal. We've been talking about it for so long now between the EU and the South American Mercosur bloc. It's finally approaching the finish line.
Well, the European Commission has given final approval to this massive free trade deal and put it forward to member states to sign. A draft text was initially agreed in 2019 after decades of negotiation, but it was never ratified amid protests by European farmers. The Commission insists that the revised deal has robust safeguards to protect them. Luke Traeger has more.
The European Union looks likely to form the world's biggest free trade zone with South America's Mercosur 25 years after negotiations first began.
Mercosur will be the EU's biggest trade deal to date, a free trade area with 700 million customers. Europe is strengthening existing alliances and creating new relations where all involved will benefit.
Against a backdrop of US tariffs which have upended global commerce, the EU's been seeking to diversify its partners and secure new trade markets. Mercosur, the bloc uniting Argentina, Brazil, Paraguay and Uruguay, would remove import duties on 91% of EU goods, with the European Commission estimating an increase in exports up to 39% or 49 billion euros a year. However, EU farmers, fearing cheaper Latin American produce undercutting them, vehemently opposed the deal, with backing from governments in France, Poland and Austria. Brussels promised measures, such as a preferential 7.5% tariff on a small quota of beef imports equal to 1.5% of EU production, with levies of 50% on anything further, and a €6.3 billion crisis fund for any European farmers negatively hit, as opposition waned.
We agreed with the French. They should at least work with us to prepare a defense mechanism. That is, if Mercosur comes into force, and if any negative signs appear regarding the beef market, for example, the European Commission should immediately implement defense mechanisms, meaning reintroducing tariffs.
Other imports would be monitored to prevent what the Commission called any harmful surge. 15 of the EU's 27 members, representing 65% of the population, will be needed to approve the deal following a vote in the EU Parliament, which could happen by the end of the year.
Meanwhile, Yuka, Donald Trump says his government may have to unwind some of the trade deals it struck as his policies face legal challenges.
Well, for the first time, the US president suggested that a raft of trade deals he had reached with the EU, Japan, South Korea and others could be invalidated by a Supreme Court ruling. The Trump administration says it's called on the highest court to fast-track the case and overturn last Friday's decision by a federal appeals court, which said that most of the sweeping global tariffs imposed by Mr. Trump were illegal, upholding a lower court's ruling that he did not have the authority to do so. Those levies are still in place, as the court gave until mid-October for its ruling to take effect, to give time for the administration to respond.
Next, Yuka, families of some of the victims of Boeing crashes, they've made what could be their final appeal to have the plane maker face criminal charges.
Well, Sharon, relatives of some of the 346 people killed in two fatal crashes in 2018 and 2019, both involving Boeing's 737 MAX planes, gathered outside a courthouse in Texas, appealing to a judge to throw out the US government's motion to dismiss its criminal case against the company. They were given time to speak during Wednesday's hearing, which lasted about 3 hours. Now, US prosecutors charged Boeing with conspiracy to commit fraud in connection with the crashes, but Boeing decided to plead guilty instead of going to trial. But the district judge later rejected the plea agreement. The plane maker also separately reached a $2.5 billion settlement with the Justice Department.
Let's finish then with a quick look on the markets.
Well, Wall Street had a bit of a mixed day today, with the Dow Jones ending the day in negative territory, but the S&P and the Nasdaq rising, led by Google's parent Alphabet. Now, Alphabet's stock jumped 9% this Wednesday, a day after a federal judge in Washington ruled in an antitrust case that Google must share more data with rivals, but doesn't have to break itself up by selling its web browser Chrome or its Android mobile operating system. And that's it from the business desk.
Yuka, thanks so much for all of that. Yuka Royer there with all the day's business news.